If you would turn in your Bibles to Acts chapter 14. That's where we're going to start this evening. So far in this series, we have been looking at unbelief. We have been, this is a series on why you should be a Christian, and it's taken us, I think, 6 or 7 weeks to get into actually why you should be a Christian. We've talked about why people aren't Christians. Now we're going to start into the section where the lesson is titled, There is a God Making the Case for Belief. And so, Tim, you want to get Acts 14, verses 15 to 17.
And saying, Men, why are you doing these things? We also are men with the same nature as you, and preach to you that you should turn from these useless things to the living God, who made the heaven, the earth, and sea, and all things that are in them, who in bygone generations allowed all nations to walk in their own ways. Nevertheless, he did not leave himself without witness, in that he did good, gave us rain from heaven and fruitful seasons, filling our hearts with food and gladness.
All right, so Paul's in Lystra here. And what did God allow? Before Christ, what did God allow nations to do? Walk in their own ways. Does that mean God accepted them in their own ways?
No, he just allowed them.
He allowed them. How do we know God didn't accept them? There are a few ways we can know, even from the Old Testament, that we can know God didn't accept the nation who went off in their own way.
Well, by the wars that he brought upon them, like justice.
Yeah, upon Israel especially, right?
Yeah.
And so when you take a look at the case for Israel, Israel was told worship Jehovah and Jehovah alone. They didn't. They went off into the same idolatry that the nations round about them did. God punished them. When you think of Nineveh, Nineveh wasn't given the law of Moses or any special law, yet they were almost destroyed by God, at least at the time of Jonah. They were later destroyed by God. I believe he brought Nebuchadnezzar to judge them, just as Nebuchadnezzar judged Israel. Then the Medes and the Persians came and judged the Babylonian Empire. The Grecians came and judged the Achaemenid Empire. And you keep going on and on. Whereas we say, well, nations rise and nations fall. When it comes to Scripture, we know God is active in those things. Now, we cannot say that every nation that rises and every nation that falls does so because God decreed it so. Sometimes God allows things to happen. But let's not come along and say, well, because God allows things to happen, that he doesn't cause anything to happen. Let's not become a deist where we just think that, well, God exists, he just sits back in his lazy boy chair and watches like a weekday soap opera as to what's going on this earth. God can and does act according to his own purpose. And so we have to recognize that God did not, in Old Testament times, just accept nations. But because Christ hadn't come to pay the price for sin yet, he allowed nations to go off and do what they would. God allows us sometimes to get what we want, even when that what we want is not good for us. Romans 1 deals with the very same thing, and that's what we're going to skip question 1 if you're wondering. We're going to go to question 2. It asks us how Romans 1, verses 18 to 23, teach that the design of God as the designer may be seen. So we left, Paul stated that God was not left without witness. So God was not left without witness. We have to imagine, though, what witness did God leave? and how should that witness have been good enough? So Bill, you want to get 18 to 20, and Henry 21 to 23 of Romans 1.
For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and the unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse.
Because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts. Their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into the image made like the corruptible man, and the birds, and four-footed animals, and creeping things.
Okay, so Paul is making known here that God's wrath is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and all unrighteousness. So no one's getting a pass for going off and creating idols. And the reason is God is known. How?
Well, I think first off, one of his attributes, his power is shown just in us, in his creation of man.
Okay, so his power is shown in creation of man. How would you expand on that?
Well, we're made pretty amazingly, pretty wonderfully. It just shows his power through his word that he just spoke us into existence.
Yeah. I'm not going to want to steal too much from question 3, but I think you're exactly right. Mankind itself shows God's power. Not only does he speak things into existence and they are so, that's something we can't do. When we create something, we take what is already there, change it, and make something different. None of us have ever taken that which does not exist, make that thing, and then make it into what we want. None of us have done that. You want to make a car, you've got to mine the iron that's going to be used. You got to forge it with other metals to create steel. Then you have to, for the different other parts, for the battery, you have to have all of the chemicals that go into that battery. No one sits in the car manufacturer's factory floor and create from nothing all the steel and all the electrical work and all of the engineering that goes into that car. Now, someplace the steel was made, but it was made from that which was already existing. We did not create from nothing. Genesis 1 has a special word for creation there. In Genesis 1 verse 1 in the Hebrew, and that which was created from nothing. God spoke it, and it was so. And that was true with everything, and man included. We are made in the image of God. We are different than any other living creature, plant or animal. And we can know that just by looking. So, the creation of this world is one of the ways that God's existence has been shown. What other ways? Whether it's from Romans 1 or Acts 14 that we read earlier. I think about how this earth runs on a day-to-day basis. If God didn't exist, what might we expect in a universe where God didn't exist, where everything just came about? What might you expect, or what should you expect? Chaos. Or at least a lack of predictability. It might not be complete chaos. And I think that's where the evolutionist comes along and says, well, it doesn't have to be chaos. You think of everything coming together. But my point is this. Everything is predictable. We don't wonder if tomorrow morning the sun will rise. Now, there might be clouds in the skies that make us so we can't see the sun. But the sun's there. You go up in an airplane, go up above the clouds, and you're not minded, oh, wow, the sun's here. No, it's the earth is rotated and the sun's in our view in the sky. And in about an hour, we know the sun is going to set. The earth is rotating and it's going to be away from the sun and it's going to get dark. If you watch the evening news tonight and you watch the weather section, it can tell you the exact time of sunset. And if you watched it last year on July the 8th, it would have told you around the same time. And if you would watch it tomorrow and last year and next year, it would be around the same time. We can predict that. That's something that we can predict. We don't control it, but we can predict it. We can predict the effect of gravity on this earth, and we can predict it on places that we have never been, based on measurements that we can take. Like I started, have you ever wondered how do they know what the gravitational effect on Jupiter is? No man has ever set foot or will ever set foot on Jupiter. But we can take measurements that would tell us. We can make calculations. You would not expect all of the things to be able to come together to form what we see. So that this earth provides rain on a predictable basis, sunshine, harvest, planting season, harvest season. Yes, there are famines. Yes, climates can change. But this earth still is habitable. Even the scientist who believes in millions and billions of years would come along and say this earth has always been habitable in some way, shape, or form. They might come along and say, well, not at the beginning, but even Genesis 1 verse 2 would say that the earth wasn't habitable at the beginning because there was no atmosphere, there were no plants, there was no life. God created that. Even Genesis 1 would agree that in the absolute beginning, no life was here on this earth and it could not have lived on this earth. But since we had an atmosphere, life has existed. It started as plants. Genesis 1 would tell us that. Then it was the oceans and the birds. Then it was the land animals, and finally man. That's what Genesis 1 teaches. It's a very similar order that the science textbook would teach. They put millions and billions of years and the chance hand of evolution, whatever that is, to get us here. But the Bible tells us how God proceeded with life. Everything works together. Everything works together. And we see the good things that God gives us. Do we deserve those good things? No, we don't. But God gives them anyway. So let's get question 3. How does the principle of irreducible complexity, we'll define what that means in a second, seen in various biological systems where the whole system only works if all the parts are present, show of an organizing intelligence? So irreducible complexity. What do we mean by that? Sort of given, but what's 2 words mean?
Complex systems need all their parts in order to function properly.
Yeah. Eventually, you break down something so far, and it will not work. We can know this on a car. There are some pieces of the car that you can take off, and it will still work. Bill, what might you be able to take off your car, and it still function the way it's supposed to? There's not much, but what could you take off your car, and it still function?
Take out the exhaust.
All right. What would happen if you took off the exhaust?
Well, it'd be noisier, but still run.
It would still run. Yeah, it would be much noisier, and it would pollute a lot further because, like, you think of the exhaust system, what it's actually taking out of the gases that are produced before it sticks whatever goes out your tailpipe. Yeah, it'll still work. Now, if I take out the ignition, will it still work? If you hot wire it, yes, but if you don't, the new cars that make it harder to do that. But you take out the ignition, take out the engine, it ain't gonna work at all. And so you can take certain things out. We know that from our what we can do. So in other words, when you have kidney problems, what happens when someone loses kidney function? What do we do? If we did nothing, they'd die. But what do we do? You have dialysis. That would filter out what needs to be filtered out. We can live now with dialysis. Not very long, not very well, but that can be done. Now, what happens if our brain stops working? Have we figured out how to stop that? How to function then?
We stop working.
No, we stop working. If our brain stops working, we can't function anymore. And so we know this from a biological standpoint, that there are systems that work together. If we take away our circulatory system, which moves our blood and oxygen around our body, we will die. If we take out our digestive system, we can put in feeding tubes that will provide basic nutrients, but that's usually put in to try to get the rest of your body working again. You're not going to live very well on a feeding tube the entire time. So we take that system out. We take our endocrine system out. We take our immune system out. All of these things work together. But when you think about it, the evolutionist is going to have you believe that we started with simple life, and slowly over time, we evolved these different systems, and we'll develop part of it, and that will give us an advantage, and then we develop another part, and that would give us more of an advantage, and another part gives us more of an advantage till we get to what we see today. It's a very slow process. I've tried to listen to Richard Dawkins try to explain how the eye evolved, because the eye is extremely complex when it comes to how it is we see. The evolutionist, the reason why Richard Dawkins doesn't think the eye is what the eye is, because he says other animals have better eyesight than we do. They can see peripherally, they can see a lot better. They might have better vision than we do, like as far as can see clearer than we do. And while some of that may be true, the difference in our habitats are different. We're not going out into the wild and needing perfect night vision, because typically we sleep at night. We don't need the most perfect of vision that other animals, well, the animals might, if they're wild animals, needs to catch food, needs to see if they are on land and sea, needs eyesight for that. God is the same one who created both, and I believe he created animals to be suited for where they live. But when you think about the eye takes in light. The eye has to, if you don't know, if you haven't taken biology, everything you see actually enters your eye upside down. Your brain has to put it right side up. So the light that's coming into my eye is upside down. It's gonna go off my retina. I can see color, although some people can't see colors exactly. Your shades might be different than mine, depends on the rods and the cones. But there's an optic nerve that goes back to my brain, and it interprets what I see. And you think about it, I heard Richard Dawkins say, well, we had this animal, it had no eye, and you'd have this sort of divot that would allow light in, that the animal can sense the light. Sort of like when you close your eyes. If you close your eyes, you can sort of sense that there's light here. But we're forgetting something. Our brain is still telling us there's light here. We know there's light here. If an animal has never seen light, let alone know it exists, it might feel the heat that comes from the sun. But you're going to assume that just putting a divot, sort of like a pinhole in a camera, is going to cause that organism to understand that it's light. You have to have the systems in order to do that. The reason why you can close your eyes and still know the light's on is because we have that system already. And so just having a pinhole like a camera does not. That camera over there, which has a light sensor on it that will produce the light that goes out to the internet and produces the picture that people who are watching here are seeing, that camera doesn't have a brain. It doesn't know there's light there. It's wired. Its computer systems can interpret that light. It doesn't know, though. If that camera breaks, if the computer chips in there break, or the lens breaks, or something in its mechanics break, people online won't see light. They won't see it at all. There's nothing to adapt that camera. And so when it comes to all of these systems, the circulatory system and the digestive system both have to be there in order for it to work. The digestive system needs the energy that comes from the oxygen we breathe, and the blood ships that around, needs that in order to work. Needs the acid in our stomach, and the acid in our stomach needs a lining on that stomach so it doesn't burn through. You get an ulcer when you have too much stomach acid, and it burns through the lining in your stomach, and it can cause great damage. So to come along and think we just evolved, that these systems just evolved, is absolutely counterintuitive. You had something, Bill?
Yeah, I just thought of everything you just mentioned. If it's not fully functional in the moment, how's it going to operate?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Walk around, we can't see, how would we have survived?
Yeah. Well, you can't see. You're vulnerable to wild animals that can come up and get you. You are very vulnerable to death from other animals. And of course, if you're blind today, you're vulnerable to getting hit by a car. to falling down into a ditch, to a whole host of things. But again, yes, as you said, you have to have it all. When Richard Dawkins says, well, it acts like a camera. A camera does not do anything. When I turn that off, the lens may still be there, and I could have the mechanisms not actually turn the lens off, like as far as close the lens, because usually when you shut a camera off, you'll hear that snap of the lens closing. That protects some of the equipment from the light just keeping entering and it's not functioning. I can make it so that that stays open. But without the mechanism there, with the computer chips to actually interpret it, the camera doesn't know there's light there. It doesn't sense the light. And neither does anything that quote-unquote is alive either. If it can sense the light, that means the brain has some wiring to be able to interpret what it is. That we can all see this room approximately the same. Maybe if someone's colorblind, they might not see the same shade of red in our chairs, or the same shade of brown that this pulpit is, or the same shade of all of our clothing. Sometimes the rods and the cones don't work as well in our eyes. We get cataracts. Maybe our vision's not as well. But generally speaking, we all interpret the same thing. We can count the number of chairs here, get the same number. We are interpreting the world around the same way. If I were to ask you what Bill looks like, if I were to ask Henry and I were to ask Tammy, well, Tammy's cheating, she knows him a little more, but you get the same picture. You get the same picture as to what Bill looks like. Now, why can we do that? Because our brains are interpreting the light that we see. It's just light. That's all it is that we use to see. But our brain has to interpret it. And if our brain can't interpret it, then really it's just light. And that's a problem when we deal with things. All these other systems work the same way.
I'm not ashamed to own